One, two, three. Gosh, too many to count. Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Sorry, you caught me counting my number of mid-pack finishes I had last year. Impressed? I'm expecting a lot more of the same next year. Race season's coming up and it's time to set some goals. Regardless of what goals you have for next year, the best way to get there is through setting up a training plan. Today, I'm gonna walk you through what a typical training week looks like for me, and I'll be able to break down what might be worth doing for you or what might not be worth doing for you based off of what your goals are. For me, my training is based around 60 to 75 minute criterium races, which are relatively short by cycling standards, but the racing is really dynamic and done at a high intensity. For that reason, I don't feel like I need a high volume or as high of a volume as people who may be training for road racing. I tend to spend about 7 to 10 hours a week on all training. That may sound like a lot to you, it may sound like not a lot at all. I think I fall more in the camp of I spend less time training than most people in my given category. But I'm gonna talk about how I try to maximize my training time, what I could do better, and what's gonna be able to translate towards your goals in making you successful. So I start my training week on Mondays, and Mondays I call the gym days. I was able to find on Facebook Marketplace a squat and bench rack for about $100. You could do that, or you could just get a gym membership. But in the off season, I do think it's worth spending some time with some weights. Now with cycling, you're not gonna be focusing on throwing up as much weight as possible, but cycling does tend to focus on certain muscles, and you can end up losing strength in other muscle groups. Prime example, at the end of last year, I tried squatting and realized that my hamstrings just had not been targeted at all. And I think that was a weak point in my leg strength and probably caused me to pay in some ways during the race season. So again, Mondays, I break up into a couple different lifting types. I'll start out with squats. Squats are gonna be big for just targeting those legs, targeting some of the muscles that you're using during cycling and some of the ones that may not be used as much. So I'm not gonna be doing a high weight. I'm gonna be, just trying to build, adding 5 to 10 pounds each as I go through each set, and week by week I'm gonna be adding a little bit. So I'll try to do 3 or 4 sets of squats. I end up mixing those up with benching. Benching is gonna be super important for cycling. No, it's actually not important at all. I just realized at the end of last season that my arms were starting to look a little bit more like noodles, and I'm a big supporter of the idea that all-around fitness takes a little bit more than cycling. So one of the things I would encourage you to do as well is to look into how you can strengthen muscles that aren't targeted during cycling. I think it'll make you a more well-rounded athlete, as well as, it'll have certain advantages at certain points in the race. I did not do any explosive leg exercises like a hang clean or power clean, but that's gonna be big for building up those fast twitch muscles if you're looking to improve your sprint. My sprint is pretty weak, so I could definitely afford to do some more of those. But again, in the off season, I'm just trying to build base at this point. So my warm up usually consists of doing some jump ropes. As I get older, I find it's harder to just throw weight on a bar and start picking it up or throwing it up. So I do a lot of jump ropes. I also think it helps focus a little bit on anaerobic activity. I'll start out by just doing the general, just small hops over the rope. Then I'll try to incorporate some footwork into that, again, just for well-rounded athletic purposes. Once I've done, I'll usually play a couple songs, like 2 or 3 songs, 10 to 15 minutes. It can be pretty exhausting until you get used to it. It's gonna be targeting some of those fast twitch muscles, especially in the lower leg, those calf muscles. So I do think it's beneficial. After that, I am going to do some double unders. That's gonna be exhausting. I do it to failure, and sometimes that's 15, sometimes that's 30, depending on, usually it's my wrists or my arms that tire quicker than my legs. My form isn't great with those, but the idea here is that I am focusing on anaerobic strength and just being able to push through exhaustion. That will pay off later on come race season. So after I've done some of the heavier lifts, the squats and the benches, I'm gonna move on to some targeted single leg strength. Just for example, I put the one-legged squats here. I'll put my back leg up on the bench, adjust my foot for balance, and then go through 8 reps with each leg. You can see I barely have any weight on there at all, but these are brutal. I haven't spent a lot of time isolating each given leg, and I think that can be beneficial in building strength. So I would definitely recommend doing this. On Tuesday and Wednesday this week, I spent time on the trainer. It's the winter and I am a teacher, so usually by the time I get home, I don't have enough daylight or any safe roads to ride outside, so I end up spending a lot of time on the trainer. Tuesday was a tempo and sweet spot effort on Zwift. I use Zwift. I think it's a little more entertaining. I think you can have success with a lot of different programs, but I'm able to build the workouts I want to, or find them and build a program from that. So with my time on the trainer, especially with the tempo and sweet spot workouts, one of the things that I would recommend is if you have even the camera on your phone, film yourself on the trainer and you'll be able to really make some improvements in terms of your cycling form that could pay off and pay big dividends when the season comes around. With tempo workouts, I've spent a lot of time on zone 2, trying to build a base. If you're new to cycling, zone 2, the easiest definition I've gotten is what you can ride at while having a comfortable conversation. Not very scientific, but that should give you a starting point, especially if you don't have a power meter on your bike. Tempo and sweet spot is going to be just below that functional threshold power. It's still going to be building a base, and I think where I went wrong last season is I built up a pretty solid anaerobic form, but I didn't have base to fall back on. So midway through races, I was able to respond to attacks, but staying on the power, especially trying to get into breaks, I found I wasn't able to stay in breaks over long distances or over a large amount of time. But while you are in tempo or zone 2 workouts, I was saying you should start filming yourself and take a look at your form. Your body is going to be the biggest piece of drag on the bike, and you can see the difference in my riding on when I'm just holding the hoods versus when I kind of grab the tops of the hoods and bend my elbows almost to rest my wrists on that handlebar. You can really see how much lower my back gets at a few points. I even went to the puppy paws position. I wouldn't really recommend getting used to that. I don't think it's very safe, and there's a lot of races that won't even let you do that position anymore. But you can see why it was popular. It enables me to lower my shoulders a bit more and just get a bit more aero. But it's easy to get in that position for 5 seconds or 10 seconds. But over a trainer ride, you'll really see how difficult it is to hold an aero position, number 1, and to put power down in that position, number 2. Why I recommend doing that on a zone 2 or tempo day is you can start building up the muscle memory for those positions without being at the edge, at your limit, where it's even more difficult to hold an aero position. Wednesday was a race. I actually signed online with my brother, so we both raced. It was a 32-mile race with the same climb. It was like a 6 or 7 minute climb repeated 3 times. That's a long time on the trainer for me. I think it ended up being an hour and 30 minutes, hour and 40 minutes. But that was a little bit more sweet spot, and then obviously during a race you're going to be bumping into that anaerobic, specifically on those climbs. Getting past 350, 400 watts on those just saps you real quick. What I'm finding is I need to start building back my anaerobic fitness. My base is getting stronger, but as the season gets closer, specifically with maybe a month and a half to 2 months before racing, which racing, I think the first race for us here in Virginia Beach is going to be the end of February. With about 2 months, 1.5 months, I'm going to start incorporating more anaerobic workouts so that I can build off of that base. But again, in the off season, I would say if you've got the time to start training, building that base, that zone 2 and that tempo, it's going to make you a lot stronger, and you're going to have a better base to fall back on when you're exhausted during those races. Thursday was an off day for me. I almost forgot to mention that if you are lifting at the beginning of the week, your next ride, you're gonna feel it in your legs. That Tuesday tempo ride, I was feeling it in my hamstrings a lot. I think that's okay to overload your legs in the off season when you're building strength. During the race season, I'm not a big proponent for lifting, but when you've got the time in the off season to build some strength and overuse those legs a little bit, I think it's okay. But Thursday was an off day, recover. I did a little bit of body weight, upper body stuff just in the living room, again, because I'm big on trying to stay fit beyond just a cyclist. Friday, I was gonna do a recovery ride on the trainer. Some stuff came up, as it often does, so I actually ended up bumping that ride. I'm gonna do that tomorrow as a recovery ride on Sunday. But today was my outside ride, so I met up with my brother and we went outside. We did a 45-mile ride. It's about 10 to 12 miles of warm-up zone 2 to get out to some of the back roads where there's not much traffic. And we did some anaerobic efforts and then some more close to threshold efforts. We started out with 8 minutes. It was alternating 1-minute pulls at about, I think it ended up being 330, 340 watts. And that was absolutely exhausting. Just doing 4 of those with only a minute recovery in the draft is exhausting, but that's building up that 1, tolerance to discomfort, and 2, just the higher effort and the anaerobic threshold for your legs and your lungs to be able to withstand. We rode some more zone 2 after that. We ended up doing a 5-minute sweet spot effort, which I think we were around 270 watts for 5 minutes, had a minute recovery, and then moved into 1-minute pulls again. This time trying to keep it close to 300, around that FTP number. So we finished off with about 10 minutes of zone 2. Yeah, it ended up being about 45 minutes. It was really nice. It was freezing, and because of that, the GoPro shut off right at the beginning of filming. So sorry I don't have more to show of the only interesting thing I did on camera, but I'll see if I can get that sorted out for the next one. So again, tomorrow I'll finish off my training week. Tomorrow is Sunday, and I will just do a recovery ride with a little bit of zone 2, either outside if it's warm or maybe just on the trainer. And that'll wrap up the week. It ends up being about 125, 130 miles on the bike, and then 1 day in the gym, and then 1 day, an off day with just a little bit of bodyweight exercise. That's what a general off-season training week looks like for me. Now it might look very different for you depending on your goals, but you can obviously take any of this and adapt it or really make it work for you. But if you've got questions about how you should set up an off-season training week, feel free to make a comment or send me an email. And you know, if you've tried some other things that worked, feel free to send me a message or put that in the comments as well. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it or think it was helpful, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next week.